Hey everyone, Mr. Messia here. This is a lap time challenge guide for Circuit de la Sarthe with the Group 1, or more specifically the Group C cars. So in this video, we'll be using the Nissan R92CP. So to access these online time challenges, going over to sport mode, so make sure you have menu book number 9 completed and go ahead and click on the online time trials. This specific event ends at the end of November 20th, 2024, where we're using Group 1 cars made from the years 2000 or before, which essentially leaves us with the Group C cars. I'll be using the Nissan R92CP as it is a beast on the straights, which means free time gain right there. We're using high-speed VOP and we're on the racing hard tires. And your goal is to go within the 3% time range of the world record time when the event ends, and hopefully you'll be able to get your 2 million credits. Now let's go over to the lap guide, where with the Nissan R92CP you want to rev the absolute heck out of it. And when you go through the final chicane, you want to exit on 3rd gear. So again, let's go ahead and rev the absolute heck out of this car. And this first one can be taken flat out, but bring yourself towards the right, because as you go through this right turn, you're going to lift off a throttle for a very brief moment so the car can turn in a bit more, and then you'll start to apply the brakes. So this is setting yourself up for the dump chicane, and you can see right here I'm starting to brake, and I'm going to be using all of my braking power and try to brake in as straight of a line as possible. So full braking power, going on to 2nd gear, and go ahead and turn on in. The blue and yellow curves are part of track limits, and right here you can shift up to 3rd gear, but be careful with getting back on the throttle because the turbo will kick in and potentially spin you out. And I also lift off our throttle to let the car turn in a bit more, so just trying to set myself up, get the car straightened up for the exit of the chicane. Now here I like to shift up to 4th gear because that little brake when you're shifting gears lets the car turn in just a little bit more. Get yourself set up for the S's, and just as you approach the final cone on the right, that's where I start to brake. So full braking power for a short moment. I go down to 2nd gear for a bit more rotation, but do exit on 3rd gear. I do a little courtesy lift right here so I don't understeer onto the grass on the left. Go up to 4th gear, and when the blue area on the right starts, that's where you want to start to apply a bit of your braking power. So around 50% braking power for a brief moment. Let the car coast for a moment, so no braking, no throttle input, so let the car turn in a bit more, and then get on the throttle. Now let's fast forward through this. Look for the track marshals on the left. They're hanging out just after the 200-meter board. So once you reach them, that is when you start to get on the brakes. Use all of your braking power. And there's another 2 track marshals on the left. You can use them as your turning point. Go down to 2nd gear, take advantage of the curves, and you really want to slow yourself down. That way you go up to 3rd gear, and as you hit the apex, you're already getting the car rotated and starting to get back on the throttle, and you'll be able to get a faster exit. So for these 2 chicanes, it's all about getting yourself set up for the exit of the chicane. So slowing yourself down as you enter the chicane, get the car rotated, and then get on the throttle for the exit of the chicane. For the 2nd chicane, you're braking before the 100-meter board. This one is a bit sharper compared to the 1st chicane, so you do need to slow down just a little bit more. Take advantage of the curves, going into 2nd gear, back up to 3rd, and you can see that I'm trying to set myself up for the exit chicane, so I got a slower entry into the chicane, which gives me a bit of time to get the car set up for the exit of the chicane, get back on the throttle, and then able to gain a bit of time right there. Now for the end of the Mulsanne straight, you're braking just before the curb on the right starts, and you want to brake as much as you can in as straight of a line as possible. You will gradually make your way down to 1st gear, and this is just so the car can turn in just a little bit more. But you will exit on 2nd gear, and you want to be extremely careful getting back on the throttle. You can see that I'm around 90% throttle input, just so I can try to prevent too much wheel spin, which can slow me down or spin me out. and we're going to go ahead and enter the Indianapolis R-notch corners. Here I do a little quick lift off of throttle, and I'm going to start to brake right as I'm about to hit the apex of this right turn. So you see me brake in just a moment right here. I try not to poke too much onto the right because it's really easy to poke just off track limits and get your lap time invalidated. But here I start to brake full braking power and go down to second gear. I will go ahead and exit on third gear and try to get back on the throttle as soon as I can, and then bring yourself towards the left and brake before you reach the Gantt sign that is on the right. So this is the second one that is on the right. Full braking power, and just like the end of the Mulsanne straight, you can go down to first gear for a bit more rotation, go up to second gear as you exit the turn, and just carefully get back on the throttle to try to prevent too much wheel spin. But now let's go ahead and fast forward through this again one last time. Stay towards the left and brake before the Goodyear sign that is on either side of the track. You're going to go down to fourth gear using full braking power for a very brief moment, and you're going to spend a bit of time doing a bit of trail braking. So just easing off the brakes as you're turning in, and just carefully get back on the throttle. You want to stay a bit more towards the right, that way you can do a little less lifting through this left turn. And it's going to be this right turn where you're going to want to start to apply the brakes and bring yourself as close as you can to the right side of the track. So you can see around 25% braking power, 50% for just a brief moment, trying to stay towards the right, because when you reach this sign on the right, so I'm going to call this the second sign, I'm going to go ahead and just lift off our throttle, let the car turn in just a little bit more, and just carefully get back on the throttle. I'm trying not to use too much of the curb on the right because this car is a bit understeery and it's really easy to poke off track. Now for the final chicanes, I like to poke a bit into the pit lane and then start to brake before the curb on the right. So going to be a full braking power for a short bit, going on to second gear just as the car turns in a little bit more, then brake before the curb on the right starts. And here I do try to take a bit of time going through this final chicane. It's really easy to mess it up at the very end. So 50% braking power. I was trying to ease myself into the final chicane, but do go up to third gear as you exit the chicane, get the car straightened up, and fully accelerate your way out. But now let's go ahead and go through this again, but this time I'm not going to stop the video, but we're going to go ahead and rev the absolute heck out of this good boy, the Nissan R92CP, as this car is a beast on the straights. This first turn, you can't take a flat out, but you will be braking in the middle of the first corner. That way you get yourself set up for the downward chicane, trying to get the car straightened up as soon as you can. That way you can get back on full throttle power. Going on to second gear for a bit more rotation, but exit on third gear. Little courtesy lift right there so I don't understeer off to the grass on the left. Go up to fourth gear. I try not to poke too much onto the curbs on the left because this car doesn't have that much downforce, so it's really easy to just go understeer too much and end up going off the track. Tête Rouge, which is the right kink we just went through, was my arch nemesis because I kept understeering off the track and kept getting my lap time invalidated. And for the Mulsanne chicanes, I tried to slow myself down for a slow entry, but that will give me some time to get myself set up for a faster exit out of the chicanes. And this is going to be the case as well for the second chicane, but with the second chicane it is a bit sharper compared to the first chicane, so you do need to slow down just a little bit more. And I think the second chicane is crucial for getting the exit setup right because you can gain a load of time. So slowing yourself down up to third gear, you're just trying to get back on the throttle as soon as possible. If you do it just right, there's a lot of time that you can gain on both chicanes, but especially the second chicane. At least for me, that's where I found quite a bit of time that I was able to gain. End of the Mulsanne straight, brake before the curb on the right starts, braking in as straight of a line as possible, going to first gear for a bit more rotation, but exit at second gear. And you want to be really careful getting back on the throttle. It's really easy to have just a little bit too much throttle input, and you start to get that unnecessary wheel spin, which will cost you a bit of time, or worst case scenario, it just spins you out completely. For this right kink, I do a little lift and then brake as I hit the apex of this turn, going out to second gear for a bit more rotation, back up to third gear, and brake before the second GAN sign on the right. And I just noticed that those signs popped in, so I don't know, never noticed that before. But anyways, down to first gear for a bit more rotation, back up to second, and just be really careful getting back on the throttle. Now for the Porsche curves, you're trying to make use of the somewhat little downforce that you have with these Group C cars. Brake before the Goodyear sign on either side of the track, going on to fourth gear. And yeah, this car doesn't have that much downforce, so this car really feels understeery through these Porsche curves. Trying to stay towards the right and getting yourself set up for this left turn right here. Really easy to mess this up, really easy to go a bit too slow. And you can see right there where I was able to get a decent exit and gain quite a bit of time compared to my Ghost. Then take advantage of the pit lane and getting yourself set up for the final chicanes. Exit on third gear, nice and careful back on the throttle. And we're gonna go ahead and go through this one more time, but in bumper cam. So again, exit on third gear as you're starting your lap, and you want to rev the absolute heck out of this car. So first turn can't be taken flat out, but as you go through the first corner, you want to start to brake for the dump chicane that follows shortly after. Go down to second gear for more rotation, then back up to third gear as you exit the chicane, trying to prioritize getting the car straightened up so you can get back on full throttle power. For the entry into the S's, I like to go down to second gear for a bit more rotation, but then exit on third gear, little courtesy lift right there. And here for the Tête Rouge, I am trying to be careful getting back on the throttle, as this car does understeer a bit when you're exiting Tête Rouge, and it's really easy to get back on the throttle just a little too early and end up going off the track. So here we're just going to take a short breather as we look for the two track marshals just after the 200 meter board on the left. Brake right there, go down to second gear for a bit more rotation, back up to third gear, trying to get a slow entry to get a faster exit. So it's all about trying to get yourself set up for the exit of the Mulsanne chicanes, and it's going to be a similar situation for the second chicane coming up. The only thing is that with the second chicane, it is a little bit sharper, so you do need to slow down a little bit more. Now for the second chicane, looking for the 100 meter board, you're going to brake just before it, take advantage of the blue and yellow curves as they are still within track limits. And again, this second chicane is a little bit sharper compared to the first one, so you do need to slow down just a little bit more. And again, it's going to rev the absolute heck out of this car, shifting around 190 miles per hour. Look for the start of the curb on the right as you're going to brake just before it starts. Go down to first gear for a bit more rotation, back up to second gear as you carefully get back on the throttle. Really easy to get a bit too much wheel spin, which can cost you, best case scenario, cost you a bit of time. Worst case scenario, spins you out. So you need to be careful there. Same goes with Arnage, a couple corners down, where you do need to be careful getting back on the throttle. And for the upcoming corners, gonna do a quick left off our throttle, then get on the brakes as you hit the apex. Go down to second gear for a bit more rotation, back up to third gear, get back on the throttle, brake before the second GAN sign on the right, down to first gear, back up to second. Really careful getting back on the throttle, and gonna go ahead and take one last little breather before we go through the Porsche curves. Now for the Porsche curves, gonna look for the Goodyear sign on either side of the track. Gonna brake before you pass it, drop down to fourth gear, a little bit of trail braking doing right here, and try to be careful about lifting off too much of the throttle as you don't want to lose too much speed. A little bit of braking for this long right turn, trying to set yourself up for this left turn. A little bit of throttle control, try not to go too wide, especially onto the curves, so you don't get the lap time invalid for going off track. Then brake before the curb on the right, going down to second gear, but exit on 3rd gear, straighten up the car, and get back on the throttle. And with this, I was able to get a 326.2. I was really trying to get a 325, but I eventually got really frustrated and decided to call it a day here. But that's all for this lap guide. Hopefully this lap guide helps you out, and that's all for me. So this is Mr. CA, and I'll see you in the next video.